Do you find it difficult to come up with content ideas for your podcast? Or perhaps you've gotten stuck during an interview with a guest where you just have nothing to ask anymore? Try Poddex today. Poddex is the best all-in-one podcast idea generation tool. You get everything from podcast ideas to interesting conversation starters for interviews, engaging discussions, for your live streams, and even social media content ideas. With this tool, you don't have to spend weeks trying to come up with content for an episode or unique questions for your guests. Just shuffle the cards and pick one at random. Hit the record button and get started. Now you can make better content, have more fun while you're at it, and get your viral moment, all with Poddex. Head over to poddex.com and use code C4C. Once again, poddex.com and use code C4C. Hi, I am Raphael Harry. I am the host of White Label American Podcast, and this is my participation in the C4 Challenge with the Content Creators of Color Collective. I am going to be answering 5 questions from amazing content creators and sometimes everyday people who inspire me or are just relatable in one way or the other. So enjoy, and I hope you get to learn something about me and also check out the people who asked me questions. Thank you. To day 7 of the C4 Challenge. Today, I'll be answering questions from Walter Gaynor II. He is the creative director and founder of Boss Lux, the podcast, Walking While Black. www.bossluxmedia.com. That's where you can find Walter Gaynor II. Without much being said, let's dive into the questions. Question number 1. What growth have you experienced outside of podcasting since starting your show? That's a good one. Growth that I've experienced since starting my show. Belief in myself, accepting the right to say no, and respecting people's right to say no to me. And I think it has been enforced and reinforced. So it's part of growth, and I also encourage other people to do that too. Question number 2. What's something you would like to try doing or talking about on someone else's podcast that doesn't fit your own show? It's 2 things. I'll say 2 things. So one fits my show in a way, but I can't just make it all about that, because the immigrant journey is not only about just this topic. So African soccer, specifically soccer specifically related to Africa, that is being played on the continent by African players, or just about the continent in general. So yes, I can't really talk about that on my podcast right now, because my podcast is all about an immigrant's journey, which is based on my guest. So my guest may like soccer, and majority of people like European soccer, which is being played by lots of Africans. So I can't you can't turn that into an African episode. However, I can go on other people's podcasts and do that and talk about African soccer and there's not really that many around because they're still all Eurocentric. Even there are now more podcasts talking about MLS and North American soccer because, aka whiteness. And then romance, not really romance, but relationship. I don't really talk relationship per se, but that sometimes I might dabble into that on other people's, just for fun, or like, I'm not saying it's ratchet, but some of relationship stuff is basically in the ratchet category, in my opinion. So, yeah, sometimes just to go have wild fun, I might do that on other people's platforms that I respect, though. Yeah, so I can be ratchet too. Question number 3. Who are your top 3 favorite podcasts that aren't celebrity podcasts? I don't have celebrity podcasts that are amongst my favorites. So that's an easy question for me. My number 1 favorite podcast in the world, celebrity or no celebrity, it's the Black Guy Who Tips. I'll give you an example of why that's my favorite. So before I officially began podcasting, I went on a trip from New York to DC with a fellow veteran, and he had Joe Rogan playing in his car. When I came into the car, and he said, "Oh man, you gotta listen to this. I know you want to go into podcasting. You gotta listen to this man. This guy is he's a philosopher and blah blah blah." He was just. I didn't really know much about Joe Rogan. He just fell into that category of people who I just never gravitated towards. It just never pulled my attention. And when I sat down in the car, and this guy drove for about 30 minutes, and I'd been listening to that episode, I dozed off. I was just like, this don't make sense. This guy is not saying one thing that makes sense. My brain system just snapped off. They have this internal system where even if I don't want to say it out loud that I don't like this BS, it's not my car, so it wasn't my car. I did not have control over that. I just stopped hearing anything he was saying and automatically fell asleep. And my boy couldn't believe that I fell asleep on Joe Rogan. And after that day, it was like I wasn't surprised when I started learning more stuff about the type of content that he was making and the type of stuff coming from him. Now, when it comes to my favorite podcast in the world, The Black Guy Who Tips, I was fortunate one day to be doing my house chores, and I had Vice News on. And they were like, "Oh, there's a group of black podcasters who are nerds talking about Game of Thrones," when Game of Thrones was still on. And I was like, maybe I'll check them out. And I saw the Vice covered them. And I checked them out. And I was in a different mental space. But majority of what they were saying was 100% right. And I was like, this just felt like a breath of fresh air to me. It felt like someone had a mirror on me, and I was seeing myself, and I was, why am I fighting this? Why am I fighting this? Why am I? And since then, I've always religiously followed the Black Guy Who Tips, and I just love their content. It makes me laugh, makes me embrace laughter. Yeah, it was thanks to the Black Guy Who Tips that I got my top 5. So I don't know who I'll put as number 2 or 3, but I think I'll just go with 3 guys on. They're comedians, and the Black Guy Who Tips also appears there. So maybe I should remove 3 guys on and go with no, I'll keep 3 guys on. And then number 3 will be Afro Queer Podcast, because Afro Queer Podcast is mostly stories from the queer community in Africa. And it's the authenticity of that podcast is just on another level. It reminds me of my privilege, that even though I went through a lot of suffering in life, I went through a lot of hard times, there were people whose journey and the things they've been through and they're still going through, I went nowhere close to that. I've not come anywhere close to that. Even in my hardest, my worst moments, it was nowhere close to what these people have been through. And so when they get to celebrate a win, it is beautiful to see them celebrating their wins, because a lot of times it's only just their sorrows that we get to hear about. So yeah, I love that podcast, and it reminds me to be a better person too, and to be accepting of people who I do not know about. And just because I'm not in their community officially doesn't mean I should be hating them. Yeah. Are you a podcaster who does not have a website? You do not know where to begin. You are afraid. You are worried. Well, worry not. Podpage is here for you to start your website. All you need is go to podpage.com, and in less than 5 minutes, you have a website running. There's amazing colors, great templates to guide you. And if you want to go Podpage Pro, hey, all you need to do is hit the c4challenge.com website and check out the code there, C4C, and get your discount and begin. Podpage.com. That's for you. Question number 4. What's an obstacle you are currently facing in your day-to-day life? Money? Yeah, I would say, podcasting is not cheap, and shout out to people on the continent of Africa who get to podcast with way less than we do. But for the way I like to do my podcasting, it's not cheap, and I am not sorry about that. And I would love to do even more. So, yeah, money is always an obstacle, and I will appreciate more support. And the more support that comes in, the more I can grow my team and, get more hands to help me cover my blind spots and my. I don't believe in this ideology of one man team or one woman team, or you hustle. So you must do everything yourself. Nah, you can outsource. You can, utilize people who are better than you in certain aspects, and then focus on your strengths. So yeah, so money is the biggest obstacle. Question 5, which is the last question. Tell us a story about the time you fell or you hit bottom, and it wasn't until years later that you realized it was a blessing in disguise. I'll go with the story of how, I ended up with White Label American instead of the pathetic podcast that I initially started with the wrong person. That was, when you take someone under your wing and you become family with somebody, and you assume that person is family, and you take that person as a brother, and then the person betrays you, betrays your trust, betrays your family, gets to spit on your baby, spit on your wife, your significant other. It's kind of, you hit bottom, and you do not want to. You do not really want to do anything that's in the same field with the person. I don't know if it makes sense now, but it wasn't just only that, because then I started seeing a whole bunch of red flags that I refused to recognize from this individual. So an example, I'd taken this, he didn't know how to network, the person who I was mentoring, and then told me to start a podcast. And I just listened to his, to everything that he said, and said, okay, yeah, let's do a podcast together. And I just went with him and, provided everything that he asked me to get, spending almost $2,000. And he did not know how to network. So I always invited him to places, even though he has been in New York area longer than I have. He's been here for almost 2 decades before I showed up in New York. I will take him to parties, to network events. And at a party for a friend of mine who was from the LGBT community, she had a bartender serving at the party. We are on a rooftop. And he goes up to the bartender, a woman from the Hispanic community, and he asks, do you have kids? Are you married? And I don't know. He asked the woman, are you married? No, he asked the woman, do you have kids? And she said, yes. And he's like, how many kids? She said 3. And he's like, oh, I bet you must have 3. You must have 3 baby daddies. How does that? How do you survive life? Something like that. And the hostess, the bartender, had to go report him for harassment. And the hostess wanted to kick him out of the party. And because of me, they refused. She did not kick him out, and I had to cover for him. But he kept doing stuff like that at different parties. Like even the last time we hung out officially, that led to that was like the last straw on the camel's back, was I was with 5 female friends of mine, and one, including my partner, my missus, and he brought up rape being legal. That it was not illegal it wasn't against the law for a married man to rape his wife. What we call rape. If a married man had wanted to have sex with his wife and his wife said no, and he says I must have it, it's not rape for no reason. It's not like anybody he just brought, that was what he just wanted to talk about. And one of the women happened to be a lawyer. One of my friends there was a lawyer, and she tore him up. She tore into him, and all the women, they wasted him that day. And he was looking at me. I was like, hey man, why don't you have my back? And I was like, why would you bring up rape? I'm trying to market a podcast to these women, trying to get their support. Like they should, help us get guests and stuff like that. And you bring up rape. Why am I defending you? I can't defend you for this. I defended you before, but I think that was, by then I was already getting fed up. And he claimed I was a social justice warrior. That's why I refused to side with him and all that kind of nonsense. But it took until, we ended up in court and having our battle, and I still won in court. That's the day he spat on my wife and my baby. That, I started recalling all these things about him doing all this nonsense, putting my name down as a referral without telling me, and I'll get phone calls. I don't know how many stuff, and even reaching out to some of my friends about his side projects. He wanted funding for side projects behind my back, and they never told me until they saw that there was a clash between us. And then I was like, man, you guys, so I don't know how many people this guy had tried to use me as the guarantor to reach out to people and get funding. So that's the only time that I've put somebody's name publicly and said, I am not associated with this person, and his name is still on my social media, because I just had to. I don't know what he was going to do. I knew it was trash. So yeah, that I almost did not go into podcasting because of that, because of this individual who is just trashy, and he still hasn't paid me for the equipment that I bought. The court ruled it's a civil court, so, and then by the time I should have. I could have used the police. He lives in a different city, so I can't use NYPD. So, but I'm not still comfortable going to the police to get him. And then the pandemic happened, and then George Floyd murder happened, and it just felt like I was in so probably in another lifetime, if I was in a different mental space, I would have had him rounded up. And I even had people from the Navy were like, hey man, you want us to come over and get this guy? But nah, I'm not doing that anymore. I've moved on from that life. So yeah, but it's a blessing in disguise that I'm no longer associated with this person. I'm happy to no longer be around him. I'm happy that he's no longer around any of my contacts. I warned anybody who still, if anyone said, hey, I talked to him, I said, that's on you. That's on you, because, this is a person who, his child almost died. And I was the only person who was at the hospital with his family. And he still had, he was still planning to steal from me then. So imagine what he'll do to you if you go into business with him. So, yeah, it's a blessing in disguise that he's not around me. I don't want that type of human being around my daughter. And if you can be defending rape I don't know why you just bring up rape of a married woman for a married couple. That means I have to look at your marriage differently now because he's married. So, yeah. So good luck to him and his partner then on that. But yeah, it's a blessing on this guy. It's a blessing in disguise. And yeah, I'm happy about that he's no longer around me. It's not my problem. If he wants to pay me, I'll take my money back. It's my money. So I'm not going to say no to that. All right. So thank you for these questions, Walter Gaynor. Don't forget, check out bosslucksmedia.com for more of Walter Gaynor II. So thank you for listening. Don't forget to check out the C4 Challenge. There are other fantastic creators like myself included. And for more of my content, go to www.whitelabelamerican.com. And if you want to get bonus content, join us on Patreon, where there's loads and loads and loads of content, including questions from my Patreons up there. Please, we welcome your support. We have merch. You're not only supporting me, you're supporting Black-owned businesses. And I also give back to fellow content creators of color too, and from minority groups. I am Raphael Harry, host of White Label American Podcast. Thank you for the privilege of your company.